Good, welcome, good day. Welcome to Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. This is episode 13, part 2. We're going to carry forth with our discussion of Mencius. Today is the wisdom of Mencius, Chinese philosopher, circa 372 to 289 BCE, before Christ. So we're going to carry on with his beautiful philosophy that he has, but we also know that on the Sensible Truth, on the Medlock Post, that we lift, inspire, encourage, and empower. And you're going to see some of that talked about from Mencius today. And there he is, Chinese philosopher, brilliant. He took Confucianism and he's called the second sage, but he took Confucianism and enhanced it, built on education, on integrity, on values, on morals, on standing up for what's right, on being transparent. Some things that we're going to get into today. So don't get confused with today's communist China, who could care less about integrity and morals and doing what's right, versus previous history of China, which had a great history. Now, sadly, Mencius lived during the warring states at wartime, and which is sad, but he still showed us how to stand up to that and hold your own values. We're going to get into that a little bit today, because Mencius' core philosophy, let's kind of just do a review here. Compassion becomes benevolence. Shame becomes righteousness. This is that guilt feeling that you have, that conscience telling you, you really shouldn't have done that. Courtesy becomes propriety, and right and wrong becomes wisdom, understanding the difference. And then his key principles of moral philosophy are these. 1, innate goodness of human nature. 2, the heart-mind. The heart and the mind should work together to create reason, not emotion. Emotional decisions. Reason, common sense. 3, the mandate of heaven. The mandate of heaven. That unrighteous rulers can be replaced by the people. Number 4, moral education and self-cultivation. We discussed those last week in detail. Number 5, moral agency and responsibility. And we'll get into that a little bit more today. So Mencius part 2. So how can Mencius's principles apply to modern leadership? I've already given you a lot of the answers just in the last few minutes, but aiming to lead with integrity. Integrity, ladies and gentlemen. How about that? Empathy. Long-term vision. You can have a long-term goal, long-term vision, and then you have your short-term goals and visions that take a step toward the long term. But you got to have that vision. Proverbs says, if you don't have vision, you will destroy yourself. You'll be conquered. Rooted in the belief that people are inherently good. This goes to expectations of others. Now, especially in education. This applies everywhere, but especially in education. When your students are given expectations, here's the requirements. This is what's expected of you. This is when it's due. Here's our grading scale. I'm here to help you fulfill all those things as a teacher. So So when we look at people, we look at students, when we look at our children, what do we expect from our children? Do we expect good values, to learn good values, to behave properly most of the time? I mean, kids are going to be kids. I had a friend of mine years ago told me, he says, if I can raise my children not to do anything really bad, I've succeeded. And I agreed with him. Yeah, they're still going to make mistakes. I know when I trained scout leaders, this was really funny. The first time I did this, they went nuts. And there's like 30 people in the room and I'm training, and I says, how many of you keep your kids, your scouts, from failing? Everybody's hand went up. I said, so you don't want your scouts to fail? Oh, no, no, no. We want them to succeed. I said, then how do you go about keeping them from failing? And it comes up that the scout leaders ended up doing most of the stuff for them, making their decisions, not letting the boys learn how to become leaders, self-dependent, and so forth. And I says, how do you expect scouts to learn if they don't make a mistake? And then when I asked that question, the room dropped silent. And I just stood there. And it hit them. I says, what about your life? Have you ever failed? Have you ever made mistakes? Was it a learning experience for you? Are you turning those things with your scouts into learning experiences? Now, we'd be out on a camp out or something, or even at a scout meeting. Kid would come up and say, Mr. Medlock, what about this? How do we do this? How do we do that? I says, go get your scout book or go get your merit badge pamphlet and let's look it up together. Now, I could have stood there and gave them the answers and they'd have just walked away, but what did they learn? But it didn't take long as the boys started growing up and learning, hey, I've got the answers in my handbook or my merit badge book. And if it wasn't there, come ask me. So we teach them how to go find the answers. But we've got to believe that they are inherently able to do that and to grow and be good people with expectations. I know I've spent a little bit of time on this, but people thrive under virtuous guidance. I hope you believe that. They thrive under virtuous guidance. When leaders are virtuous, when they're doing the right thing, basically getting out of your way, letting you exercise your freedom, your agency, people thrive, communities thrive, nations thrive. Lead with benevolence, not fear. Folks, a ruler's legitimacy comes from moral character, not coercion, not fear, not threats, not violence, not chaos, not hatred, not division. It comes from moral character and virtuous guidance. Folks, just go back in history and look. The leaders that were moral and virtuous and led, look at the results, versus those that led in fear, that wanted to control everything you do. We talked about this a couple episodes ago about the Marxist man, what Karl Marx wanted the world to be. His brainless servants, criminal minds, No morals, no spirituality, no ethics, and not able to think. This is what we should demand from our leaders. Empower. Don't micromanage. Trust your team's potential. You, as a corporate leader, business leader, hire people. You put some of them in teams and are in a group to do a certain project or do a certain task, to make a certain thing. I have a philosophy. I think I learned this from my dad. He's also the one that taught me as a scout leader to sit down with the parents and the scout every 6 months and set goals. I learned that from him. He did that with my brother and I too. We'd sit down with my mom. We'd do it as a family. We'd have family council and do a bunch of stuff. But anyway, he said, train them, give them their expectations, and let them go. Don't micromanage them. Don't look over their shoulder all the time. Trust your team. Let them do what they're good at doing. That's why you hired them. You didn't want to trust them. You want to micromanage them. Just go hire a bunch of idiots. And you just tell them what to do at every step. I bet you some of you know leaders like that. Corporate people. Worked for them maybe. But don't micromanage. Trust your team. Yeah, you still have to have boundaries and rules on how things should work, but let that be a little bit flexible, especially if you're dealing with customers. Prioritize well-being. A leader who generally cares earns loyalty and engagement. How many times have you, I'm talking to business owners here, CEOs, COOs. How many times do you sit down with your people personally and talk with them? One of my first jobs out of college, he did that. He would sit down with us on a regular basis, every week or two, or at least once a month. Just talk to us. Not about business. How's business? He knew how business was going. He cared about us. You know, I'd only been married about a year. How's everything going with your new marriage, et cetera, et cetera. This is where loyalty comes in. Create a culture of respect where people feel safe to speak up and grow. I've seen people, and employees would have good ideas, but they knew it all. The owner knew it all. He knew it all. You can't tell me what to do. And guess what? He couldn't keep employees. He didn't want to listen to anybody. He didn't know how to listen. And he went through business after business because he had nobody loyal to him, because he wasn't loyal enough to sit down and listen to their ideas. You've heard me say this before. I don't believe there's a bad idea. You have an idea, let's come in, let's talk about it. We're in a meeting, speak up. Listen, I've done that. I've been in meetings and I got an idea. And some people kind of laughed at it. I says, why are you laughing? Don't you want to discuss it? Well, it's a stupid idea. I says, there are no stupid ideas. Or I'll ask people that have come up with ideas, says, how does that fit in? How will that work with what we want to do? And let them explain it. And sometimes they can explain it well and it gets to a certain point, but to start with, It worked well. Well, let's adapt it. And all of a sudden, everybody starts chipping in. You got a great idea. So things don't come from nothing. It's got to come from somewhere. Cultivate the heart mind. We've talked about that. Practice emotional intelligence. Understand your own values and those of others. Let me ask you right now. How many of you could sit there and explain to me your values? Can you explain your values to me or to anybody? If a reporter came up to you on the street and said, "Sir, ma'am, what are your values?" What do you say? What do you say? Maybe this is something you need to think about. Because the more you understand your values, the more you can hold on to them and help you in tough times to make right choices, to keep your values. Lead with self-awareness. Reflect on your decisions and their ethical impact. I don't want to do anything wrong, but I'm going to ask somebody else to do it. Now, what kind of value is that? You're just as guilty now as the person you asked to go do something wrong. You're an accomplice, an accessory to the fact. So lead with self-awareness. Encourage moral reasoning. Foster a workplace where doing the right thing matters. We talked about in the last thing about a leader or someone that can make a no decision in certain places can make good decisions when it really counts. They're able to say no to the unethical, to the bad, wrong things. They can stay away from it. This is what this encourage moral reasoning. Nurture innate potential. Now, just as Mencius believed in the four sprouts of virtue, modern leaders can mentor and coach. One of my corporate training things was in mentoring and coaching. There's a difference now. Coaching usually starts at the beginning of someone when they're just getting in there, they're getting their feet wet, they're finding their way, and that's coaching. Mentoring is helping them continue on the good path. They're already there. It's just making sure they stay there. Now, those are simple explanations, but it helps others to grow into their best selves. This can be done at home. This can be done at the workplace. This can be at church. There's all kind of places. You might be in a book club or some other kind of club, or your golf buddies, tennis partners, whoever. This is the things we're talking about is applicable anywhere in life. Recognize strengths. See beyond their potential. Why did you hire that person? Why do you work with that person? Why do you volunteer with that person? What is good about them? What do you learn from them? What strengths do you get from them? What strengths can you give to them? Recognize those strengths. Sadly, in today's world, everybody looks for the weaknesses, the bad things. Well, let's flip that around. Let's look, going back to the inherent good, recognize people's strengths and help them build on that. When you do that, it helps their weaknesses become strengths. Just like when you put a team together at work to accomplish a task, each person has their own strength. If you put everybody on the team with the same strength, it's probably not going to work out very well. But if you put someone in there with a strength in each of the categories that you need to achieve the goal of the team and build on those strengths, and even someone who has a weakness in a certain area, but those around them will help that weakness become a strength. There's so much to talk about here. Maybe I need to start doing online seminars again. This is, I get into this stuff and I just get excited because it's all true. It all supports our daily lives and our goals. Invest in development. You want to have opportunities for learning and self-cultivation. Challenges. Listen, good morning, go get your job done. Do challenges, have rewards. And then you go into places and you see these plaques up, employee of the month, employee of the week, employee of the year. You don't see a plaque that says makes most mistakes. That's demoralizing. Those people are going to quit. Wait a minute, you put my name up for everybody to see? I'm out of here. No, 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 no. You recognize, you invest in development. Okay, this person is making mistakes. Let's help them. Let's mentor them and coach them to do better. It's not hard. Really isn't. Model moral responsibility. Transparent decision making. Own your choices and explain your reasoning. We have a culture in this country right now, and even in the world, that doesn't want to do this. They just ignore this. It's not good. Own up. If your decision didn't work out, own it. Don't start blaming everybody. That's what this world's gotten into. I'm a victim. They caused it. It's their problem, their fault, so-and-so's fault. I had a bad childhood. Well, going the wrong way here. Ethical governance. Resist short-term gains that compromise long-term trust. How many of you heard of the story test they did years ago, back, I think in the 70s or early 80s? And they took these kids and they set them at a table and put a really, I can't remember if it was ice cream or donut or something in front of them, very enticing to these kids. And they said, if you can sit there for 15 minutes without touching that and eating it, we'll give you a whole dozen or a whole bunch when you have all you want. It was interesting. About half the kids could not wait 15 minutes and they started eating it. The donut, or probably wasn't ice cream, it had been melting. They started eating the donut. or the cookies or whatever it was. Then that was it. That's all they got. And those that lasted more than 15 minutes got all they wanted. So take that story and look at ethical governance. When decisions are made, what would we be sacrificing on the long term for this short term gain? Is it worth it in the long run? How many times has that question been asked? Is it worth it in the long run? Courage to challenge injustice, even when it's inconvenience. Folks, this goes to a lot of things. We're going to talk about a little bit more later. Courage to challenge injustice. Speak up. I went through this in a class in college, and I stood up. This professor was browbeating this other student, and I stood up against that. It changed the whole class. Now, he kicked me out for standing up to him. We're still in the drop period. And he said, you either drop or I fail you. I don't care what you do. I'm going to fail you. So go draw. But anyway, and folks, I don't like bullies. I was always standing up to bullies. Adapt with integrity. Mencius lived at a time of upheaval, yet he held fast to moral principles. Folks, let's look at the world right now. It's two worlds. This middle gray area is gone. You have one world over here that's following God, who's ever God it is. They're trying to be obedient to the laws they understand. They're trying to be obedient to the laws of the country that they live in. And then you have this group over here that wants to control this group and everybody else. They want everything for themselves. They don't want to work for it. They want to take it. Everything belongs to them. Everything belongs to everybody mentality, this communist mentality. They have no respect for rule of law. And this is what we're dealing with. So Mencius is saying, hold to your moral principles no matter what. Stay grounded in your values during change or crisis. Through history, we have seen this over and over and over. How many people in the Reformation period, with Martin Luther and John Calvin and others, they're trying to bring forth the Bible, translate it, and so forth, ended up getting burned at the stake, hung, beheaded, ostracized, run out of their country, but they would not change. How many people in the Middle East are we seeing now, these caustic Christians that are lined up, kneeling on the beach, and these terrorists are telling them, if you don't denounce your God and adopt Islam, we're going to behead you. And guess what? They would not denounce their God, and they got beheaded. The Bible is full of these stories. But let me ask you, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, Daniel in the lion's den, and others like that. Daniel would not pray to the heathen gods. They threw him in the lion's den. God protected him. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were set in a furnace that even though that furnace was so hot, even those that took him there and threw him, it was so hot it killed them. But all of a sudden there was a fourth figure in there. And it was either Christ or angels protecting them, and they walked out. Now, let me ask you that. Let me ask you this question. How many people did that influence to hold to their values? How many? 1, 5, 500? It had to make an impact on the citizens. They stood up for what is right. It might have cost them their lives, but they stood up for the right, for their values. Balance flexibility with consistency. Adapt strategies, not ethics. Adapt strategies, not ethics. There's all kind of strategies out there to succeed that have no ethics involved. None whatsoever. You can balance flexibility, but be consistent. Be consistent in your values, in your ethics. Once you start straying from that, you start losing people. You lose friends, you lose family, you lose business. But if people can count on you to do what is right, then you have succeeded. Inspire through vision. What is your vision? Have you thought, do you have a vision? Short term, long term? Create a vision. Have that vision. Your vision, you want to be a millionaire? Long-term vision? Then what are your short-term consistent strategies to get there? Will you have setbacks? Absolutely. So Mencius extended his moral philosophy to politics. Rulers should govern with benevolence and justice, not fear or force. We talked about that earlier. The mandate of heaven is conditional, should be non-conditional. If a ruler is unjust, the people have the right to rebel. A good government ensures the well-being of the people, especially the poor. Not keeping them poor. That's the strategy that our government sadly took in the 1950s, actually in the 40s. The great deal under Franklin Roosevelt was to keep people poor and get more people on the poor in the poor house, so they would vote for them to keep giving them things. But they're still poor. Leadership is a moral responsibility, not a license for power. It's a license to empower the citizens. But you do it through moral and virtuous leadership. Let me throw this vision out there. What if the United States had stayed on its virtuous path, had not got involved in communism, had not taught it in the schools, had stayed true to its course that it did the first 170 years, 130 years, stayed on that course, where would we be today, and where would the world be today? Because of moral and virtuous leadership. So education as a moral cultivation. Everyone has a potential to become virtuous. Believe that. Teachers should guide students in self-reflection and ethical reasoning. But first, you have to have teachers with ethics. Learning is a lifelong journey of becoming fully human. Once you stop learning, no phrase, you're dead. Moral agency and responsibility. Stay true to your values under pressure. Choose righteousness over personal gain. Wow. Have you ever had to do that? Practice self-discipline and perseverance. Self-discipline. So, Mencius' teachings apply to today's ethical issues. Mencius' teachings may be over 2 millennia old, but they pulse with relevance in today's ethical landscape. His belief in the innate goodness of human nature and the importance of moral cultivation offers a framework, a powerful framework for addressing modern dilemmas, from leadership and justice to social harmony and personal righteousness. Criminal justice reform, he talked about that. Equity in education and healthcare. Moral psychology and empathy. Using AI and tech for good things. Mental health and advocacy. Leadership and accountability. Corporate ethics, we've covered that. Political integrity. Harmony in a divided world. Civic dialogue is missing, folks. Cross-cultural ethics. Understand what's our common ground. Personal responsibility and moral growth. Ethical consumerism. Digital citizenship. Now, let's close with this. Moral courage. Moral courage. If Mencius were to lead a discussion on moral courage, he would begin not with grand gestures, but with the roots of courage in the everyday heart. He would pose questions that invite reflection on the quiet moments when conscience whispers and the world is silent. He would ask, when you witness wrongdoing in small matters, do you speak or do you turn away? When the choice is between comfort and principle, how do you decide? He might tell the parable of the child about about to fall into the well, a scene he often used to evoke our instinct for compassion. Mencius would ask, what moves you to save the child, even when no one is watching? This impulse, unabiding and sincere, is the beginning of courage, moral courage. From there, he would guide the conversation toward the cultivation of righteousness, the willingness to act rightly, even at personal cost. The discussion would not dwell on heroes who defy emperors, but on the moral fiber required to challenge a friend's prejudice. In today's world, can we do that? To return a lost wallet or to admit a mistake. People can't do that today. Mencius would press, how do we strengthen our resolve to do good in the face of mockery, pressure, and loneliness? There are many people out there pointing the finger of mockery when you do right. I am amazed. I was talking to my wife last night. I am amazed at the negativity in reporting today in news. It is all negative. Wimbledon just finished yesterday. None of the articles were positive about the winners. Nothing was positive about tennis. It was unbelievable, folks. So when you feel the stirring of shame, attend to it. This is your heart's reminder. not to stray from virtue. Not to stray from virtue. Ladies and gentlemen, we live at an interesting time. And to further understand philosophers like Mencius and also the teachings of Jesus Christ and other righteous leaders, it will help us understand and have a vision of moral courage. We must recognize our faith in the innate goodness of humanity. We must work on that. So in this light, the cultivation of moral courage becomes both a personal journey and a communal responsibility. As we nurture these seeds within ourselves, we inspire those around us, and together, we shape a world where integrity is not an aspiration, but a living reality. And that is our message today on the Sensible Truth, the Medlock Post. We spent the last two sessions on Mencius, Chinese philosopher who enhanced Confucianism. And it's great stuff, folks. It goes right in line with Christianity and other good religions. We have to understand that. Take the truth wherever it is. I still believe I started this telling you, God gives to men and situations inspiration and truth at what the people would handle at that time. And he's still doing it. And that's our message today. May God bless you and may God bless America. This is Richard G. Medlock signing off. Goodbye.